Joining us now, Melanie Zanona, senior congressional reporter for Punchbowl News, and former Republican Congressman from Florida, David Jolly. Welcome to you both. Ladies first, Melanie. So what are you hearing on Capitol Hill about Speaker Johnson's chances of re-election, and how much you think Trump's support will help him? Because Trump took his time endorsing him. Do you think it hurt Johnson?
Well, I certainly think that an endorsement is better than a non-endorsement or an anti-endorsement. Mike Johnson absolutely needed this vow of support from Donald Trump because over the past few weeks, there were a lot of questions, a lot of skepticism, a lot of critics. There was a lot of dissatisfaction, including in Trump world, I'm told, about how Mike Johnson handled the latest spending bill debate. I do think that this is going to sway at least some Republicans who may have been on the fence about Mike Johnson, but this is not going to seal the deal for Mike Johnson. And there's a couple of reasons why. Number one, the margins are really tight for Mike Johnson. The math is a little unclear at this point. It kind of depends on who actually shows up on January 3rd on Friday, but he's only going to be able to lose a couple of Republicans. And number two, Trump has made demands in the past, including during that last spending bill debate, and several conservatives defied him anyway. In fact, 38 House Republicans, most of them hardline conservatives, voted against a stopgap spending bill that included a suspension of the debt limit, as Trump has called for. So there are some limits to what Trump is calling for. I do think the best thing for Mike Johnson and what's really working on his side here is that the House can't conduct any legislative business until they have a Speaker of the House, and that would include certifying Trump's election. Mm-hmm. So my suspicion is that, yes, there might be some Republicans who say they're unswayed. I think Thomas Massie, he's going to be a no matter what. But people like Victoria Sparks and Andy Biggs and Andy Harris, some of these Freedom Caucus folks, they're going to want to just try to get some concessions or demands out of Johnson. Ultimately, probably will be in his camp because they know that they can't move forward on Trump's agenda until they have a Speaker of the House. But I do think that we are going to be looking out for the next couple of days of what type of dealing is going on behind the scenes and whether it does take multiple Mike Johnson to get there. And again, this is set for Friday, and certification of the election comes Monday. So they have absolutely no time to mess around with. David, New York Congressman Mike Lawler warned Republicans not to vote against Johnson. Let's take a listen to that.
The fact is that these folks are playing with fire, and if they think they're somehow going to get a more conservative speaker, they're kidding themselves. Mike Johnson is arguably the most conservative speaker that's ever been elected to the office.
I'm curious your reaction to this, David. Is re-electing Johnson a good move for the party, and is there anyone else that would have ability to better unite all factions of the GOP?
Well, it's likely the only choice they have. And to the second part of your question, probably what contributes most to Mike Johnson ultimately prevailing is nobody else can really get there either, with the margins as close as they are. And that is now more true after Donald Trump's endorsement of Mike Johnson. Now, we can all remember Donald Trump's endorsement may not be ironclad. He kind of tweeted in real time as Republicans went through the carousel of candidates after the McCarthy resignation. Trump kept moving the ball. So it's not to say he'll stick with them always if Johnson doesn't get there. I think the fascinating part here really is how close the margins are. As Melanie said, if Massie is a no, by some math, he can't lose another one. Now, there are other math that it gets really tricky here, depending on whether somebody votes present or whether they name an alternative candidate. Can Mike Johnson make sure that he doesn't lose 2 votes? I mean, that is really hard in this environment. But I think to Lawler's point, nothing changes the dynamic. This is a coalition government between Hakeem Jeffries and the Republican speaker. Mike Johnson has had a very John Boehner-like speakership. I mean, the main things that got done under his speakership and frankly under McCarthy were keeping the government open twice, raising the debt ceiling, and funding Ukraine aid. And that was it. And we're entering a time where that might be it again, even though Republicans control all of Washington.
Is there any chance, David, that first vote on Friday, he gets reelected as Speaker?
Well, I think to Lawler's point, if Massie and others realize there is no alternative, do they really want to be the architects of chaos like Gates was? Then you give this to Johnson and you move on with unity. They could do that by voting present, a couple of them probably, but this is in the hands of just a very few Republicans right now.
Yeah. Melanie, so what happens if the House does not pick a Speaker on Friday? Or by next Monday, January 6th, as we were saying, when Congress needs to certify the election results?
Yeah, we are in completely uncharted territory. I feel like I've said that a lot, including on your program, that we are in unprecedented times. I've covered multiple speaker battles that have never happened before. We could be in for another one, certainly. There is a playbook in the sense that we know now what it'll look like if we have to go through multiple rounds of votes for Johnson to get there. But we don't know what would happen if they don't have someone in place on Monday. I have heard some people saying that they could, elect maybe a temporary speaker to the position to be able to oversee the certification of the election results. We just don't know for certain how this is going to play out. I'm sure that's something that a lot of Republicans on Capitol Hill are looking at, studying, reading CRS reports, trying to figure that out. But like I said before, I think that is Johnson's probably biggest argument and biggest strength heading into this vote on Friday, is saying, you need to elect me because there's no one else. And if we don't have a speaker in place, we can't do anything. We can't certify Trump as president. We can't start working on things like reconciliation and cutting taxes and securing the border. So I think those are going to be the arguments that Johnson is making to his conference.
Well, yeah, to your point, I've heard you use the word unprecedented many times, but you guys have both heard me say, ready, buckle up. So I guess that's what we'll do on Friday. Thank you so much.